G'day and welcome to this week's video. My name's Robert Gowdy, and as I mentioned last week at the end of the video where I covered off on understanding your tax rates, we're going to do some end of financial year planning, some strategies, so really the things that you should be thinking about as you go into June and lead up to the end of the financial year. So some really core strategies. I'm not going to be delving into the really complex stuff where we might be doing a transition to retirement strategy, increasing superannuation, or putting business real property into superannuation. We're really just going to focus on some of the real core things that you should be thinking about, not just as we lead into the end of financial year, but as you go along each and every year. So first of all, when we think about superannuation, we need to be able to contribute. And there's certain rules on who can contribute and who can't. So in brief, you need to be, if you're 65, under 65 years of age, you can contribute whether you're working or not. Once you hit 65, you need to meet a work test. That work test is 40 hours over a 30 consecutive time frame. And you need to make your contribution after the work test has been met. So reasonably flexible, but yeah, once you get to 65, the rules change. When people get to hit 75, you're essentially out of your superannuation and contributing into superannuation once you hit 75, so the buck stops there. The first ones we want to explain is the concessional contributions, and that's where you're putting up to the current cap, the contribution cap, is the amount we can put in, which is a concessional contribution, is 25%. So the money that goes into your superannuation is taxed. It's concessional. It's taxed at 15%, and that lowers your personal assessable taxable income down. So if you go back and see last week's video, everyone's got their personal marginal tax rates. And as a general rule, the government have made it really attractive for us to use superannuation. As a tax rate of 15% is a concessional tax rate compared to 34.5%, 39%, or up to 47%. Now you need to understand that the 9.5% employer contributions, what your employer puts in on your behalf, or superannuation guarantee, or any salary sacrifice arrangements that you have in place, that is included in the $25,000. There is that cap. It is a limit. You can't go over that. Or you can, but they're going to refund some money back to you more than likely. A number of years ago, the rules were changed where employees weren't able to make an assessment at the end of the year and determine whether they should make a top-up contribution to the super fund. Now you can. So if you want to make sure that you max out your 25 grand, you can ring your super fund, talk to your HR, your payroll officer, and find out how close you are in terms of salary sacrifice that's gone in or employer contributions. And if you need to top that up, you can do that with what they call a personal tax deductible contribution, but you will need to lodge an notice intention to a claim form with the superannuation fund to do that. So there's a little bit extra paperwork. I definitely recommend salary sacrifice is a preferred option there for self-employed people, particularly farmers. Making that call at the end of the year is always the best way to do it, because guess what? Farmers don't know where their income is at from one year to the next. Then there's the non-concessional. This is where you're putting in after-tax money into superannuation. So you've already paid your tax on that money, and it goes in as what they call a non-concessional contribution. There is a cap of $100,000 per annum. However, you do have the ability to bring 2 financial years forward into the one that you're in and put in 3 years worth of contributions in one hit. Now that's only for people that are under age 65 that can use that rule. And people that obviously between 65 and 75, you're limited to the 100,000, and you need to meet the work test to be able to do that as well. Now, it gets a little bit tricky. Obviously, in the last couple of years, there's been further changes to the superannuation system. Don't let this get you down at all, because at the end of the day, the incentive, the carrots to put money into superannuation are absolutely alive and well, and still extremely generous. But part of those changes were, if you've got a total superannuation balance of $1.4 million or more, the amount that you can contribute is scaled back. So once you get to 1.4 million in superannuation in an individual's name. We're not talking about couples. These are individual accounts. You can put in your 300 or up to, and it comes down as you get closer to the 1.6. Now, the $1.6 million, once you get over that figure, you can no longer put in non-concessional caps. And the thinking there is that the government has given us $1.6 million that can sit in pension mode. And once we're retired and over age 60, the money that 1.6 pays out to you as a pension is tax-free. The income that fund earned, the 1.6 internally within the fund, is tax-free as well. So it's still very generous. You can have up to $3.2 million as a couple, completely tax-free. So I believe, there's the carrots. Still extremely beneficial to utilise superannuation. Now, this one's having a look at the co-contributions. It's been around for a long time. You do need to receive at least 10% of your income from employment or self-employment. And you do need to lodge a tax return. But this is where essentially you put in $1,000 into your superannuation fund and you're earning, let's say less than about $37,000. The government will give you $500 for nothing. That is a 50% return on your money. So money for jam, as they say, and I'd highly recommend you do that. If you're a parent or a grandparent that have children that would be eligible because they're working part-time, here is an awesome opportunity to give them a gift of $1,000, and the government will throw in another $500 just for fun. So well worth doing. You need to be under the age of 71. Your total super balance needs to be under the 1.6, and it must be obviously a non-concessional contribution, an after-tax contribution. Then there's the spouse contributions, not as widely used as what the co-contributions is, but there's essentially the opportunity to get an 18% return here, or up to $540. So again, if your spouse has less than $1.6 million in superannuation, under 70, and obviously a tax resident, so your spouse can put in on your behalf $3,000 of after-tax money, goes into your fund. He or she will receive a 18% tax rebate, and that is represented there in the an extra $540. So well worth doing. Again, free money. Don't leave these easy pickings on the table. And that just gives you a look that 37 grand or less, you put $3,000 in as a spouse contribution. You'll need to check with your superannuation fund to ensure that you've got the right contribution codes to make sure that it goes in as a spouse contribution. So there, and obviously it comes down as the wage goes up, but yeah, for those under 37 grand, 3 grand in, even if it's, you might say cash flow is tight, but if you've got cash reserves, for co-contributions and spouse contributions, make sure you take advantage of those. And probably the last one I was keen to touch on, for those particularly that are running self-managed superannuation funds, it is your responsibility as trustees to make sure the minimum pension payments have been paid out to you on the within the 12-month time frame. Now, you're better off to being 10 grand under than $1 under. So you've got to meet these minimum amounts that are paid out within the pension accounts within your fund. If you're with a Colonial First Aid or an Australian Super, they will take care of that for you. But if you're a self-managed super fund, it is your responsibility as trustees to make sure it's right. But you can see here that the rate that has to come out, the minimum payments, goes up as you go along. So look, hopefully that was helpful, and there's enough time for you to action some of this, particularly the concessional contributions, government co-contributions for yourself, spouse, or children, grandchildren. Great opportunity there to help people out, and definitely revise your caps for the concessional contribution to make sure that if cash flow allows that you're maximising that and saving the tax. And I'd recommend going back to the previous video, last week's one, where we covered off on the tax rates, and that'll give you an idea of what you'd actually save putting extra money into superannuation to bring your tax rate down. And so good luck. Hope all goes well up to the end of the financial year, and we'll speak to you soon. Please subscribe if you already haven't. For those that have, thank you, and we'll catch you next week. See ya.